This was supposed to be so much. This game, this Carolina-Chicago game was supposed to be one of the more exciting, interesting, revenge-filled, maybe petty matchups of the entire year. I don't think it's a surprise that we got this one towards the front half of the season, because the schedulers putting together the schedule said, ooh, let's put Bryce Young against the guy that was part of the trade to go get Bryce Young. Caleb Williams, that first overall pick, was supposed to be the Panthers, but they traded away that pick for Bryce Young, so they were going to put them against each other. Then Bryce Young got benched, Caleb Williams is struggling, and seemingly everybody forgot about it. Now it's just two middling franchises out there trying to catch their bearings. But it's not that. It is still some form of what it was supposed to be. The Panthers will be trying to make up what they lost in that trade for a while. And they're going to have to hit on some mid-round picks, and they're going to have to hit on some players in free agency to make up everything they gave up in that trade. It's not even done yet, by the way. Their second-round pick this upcoming draft still goes to the Chicago Bears, which adds a little bit of like the Chicago really wants to win this game because that makes their own pick better by making the Panthers worse. Like this should be bitter. This should be bitter. Dave Canales, the head coach of the Panthers, and obviously Bryce Young's head coach, Andy Dalton's head coach, the Panthers head coach, was asked about Caleb Williams so far through the first month of his career.
I know that with rookie quarterbacks, you just try to feature the things they do well, and I think they're working towards those things. But again, they're starting over conceptually. And I've been in that place twice now, in Tampa and then here, and it takes time to figure out your identity of what the offense is going to look like, get a focal point and all that. And they're working towards that. And they certainly have some skilled players and some talent around them.
You want to know a dirty little secret that not many people are mentioning? And I actually had to double check. You do the math. I took the notes.
Okay.
And then I was like, let me make sure. And I went back and I rechecked my work.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Young's first 4 games last year.
Okay.
Better than Caleb Williams' first 4 games.
I'm sorry, what?
Better than Caleb Williams' first 4 games. Again, you got to recheck. Got to make sure you're saying it. I'm not saying Bryce Young blew him out of the water, but I'll give you the stats. And we're just looking at the basic passing stats. Caleb Williams completed 87 of 141 attempts. That's good for 61.7%. Bryce Young completed 92 of 144. Similar amount of attempts, 63.9% completion. It's a little bit better. Caleb Williams threw for a handful more yards, 787 over 4 games to Bryce Young's 750, but Bryce Young threw for 2 more touchdowns. Bryce Young threw for 5. Caleb Williams threw for 3. Both have thrown 4 interceptions. It's close, but that's pretty obviously Bryce Young. Bryce Young through 4 games better than Caleb Williams. And I'm going to throw in some context. Sprinkle a little bit of context on you. Bryce Young had the significantly worse supporting cast. You can say, oh, well, the reason why Caleb Williams is struggling is because the offensive line in Chicago is not very good. And I would counter with, yeah, same last year in Carolina.
Sounds familiar.
Just because the offensive line was good this year doesn't mean it was good last year. Carolina had problems. And then on top of not having a good offensive line, they had injuries. And you could say, well, Caleb Williams, he has Roma Dunze, he has Keenan Allen when healthy, he has DJ Moore, who was also part of that Bryce Young deal. He has DeAndre. They have weapons. The Panthers did not. So this little trade becomes more complicated if Caleb Williams doesn't live up to the hype that he had. I still think there's a good chance he will. I still think there's a ton of time. Just like after 4 starts, I was saying there's a ton of time for Bryce Young. But here's the part that should make the Panthers mad. Here's the part that should make the Panthers want to go out there and beat the Bears. Here's the ones that should make it not water under the bridge that you fleeced us. If Caleb Williams busts, it's still a ridiculously bad trade for the Panthers. Tyreek Stevenson, starting corner. Darnell Wright, starting tackle. DJ Moore, you know what DJ Moore is. And this year's second-round pick. Just that alone for Bryce Young at this point looks like a severe overpay. That's why this trade was so bad. It was wildly insulated. And what I mean by insulated is if you make a trade, and you see this ironically, a lot in all the fantasy football articles, where if you're trading a better player away or the higher value, whatever you want to think it is, try to get back picks or try to get back another lottery ticket. That way, if the main thing you're trading for doesn't work out, you have an off chance of getting the value elsewhere. Right? Get the throw-in second-round pick. Because if that second-round pick turns out to be a starting quarterback or turns out to be a starting corner or turns out to be one of the better picks in the second round, you may not even need the main thing to make the trade work. It just goes to show you how far this Panthers team has to claw their way back. From a roster-building standpoint, what Dan Morgan is stacked up against is Caleb Williams. I don't know, people throw generational prospect around too much. I don't think he was generational, but I think he's one of the years where there's an obvious number one quarterback. There was very little debate on who should go number one starting basically his sophomore year. They had an obvious number one quarterback draft pick that ended up being a part of the Bryce Young trade, and if that ultimate value, young quarterback, highly drafted, highly thought of, turns into dust, turns into nothing, Panthers still lose the trade by a bunch. And you'll see it on the field this weekend, right? When Carolina is playing Chicago, imagine, and by the way, you can do this a few different ways. Imagine if the Panthers had Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter, who's the interior defensive lineman for the Eagles, who when he wants to play is one of the best. Consistency's becoming an issue, but when he wants to play, he's one of the best. Imagine having that guy in the middle of the Panthers defense trying to stop DeAndre Swift. If whoever is across at the cornerback position from J.C. Horn has a tough day, we've seen Mike Jackson be very, very good at times. He's been adequate at least most of the season. But if he has a tough day, imagine putting Tyreek Stevenson over there. Right? This is the ghost of Christmas past a little bit. And if the Carolina Panthers edge rushers stink like they have for most of the year, and Darnell Wright is out there giving them the business, ghost of Christmas past would say, that doesn't have to be the case. That guy could have been on your team. And maybe the one that stings the most, DJ Moore. Just because you know what that's like.
Yeah, it was very difficult seeing him last year. Was it 96 catches for 1,368 yards and 8 touchdowns? You're like, oh, yeah.
I think it's funny. He's up there in a bunch of lists as far as first 6 years of a career, or however long he's been, 5 years of a career, however long he's been in. And every broadcast they bring it up, and it's, you know the names. It's OBJ, it's Randy Moss, blah, blah, blah. And then a little bit down the list, there's DJ Moore as far as yards or catches or something in the first handful of years of a career. And it's always a little frustrating when there's no acknowledgement that 90% of these came with the Carolina Panthers. It's just a Bears guy getting Bears credit on a Bears game. And it's all because of this trade. It's all because of this trade. So when they match up on the field this weekend, remember it. Get angry about it because, athletes hold grudges. They should. Motivation. And I wish there was something Bryce could do about it, but I guess he could just cheer on Andy Dalton to his anger's content.